continue on this session and talk about economic recovery. I think Nonkululeko had just spoken to our esteemed panelist, but just to reiterate, we have in our midst Ms. Kekeletso Tsilwane, we have Ms. Mahlatsi Molokakome. Apologies for mispronouncing that. So I think we're just going to start our session with our panelists and really speak on economic recovery. I know Ms. Ruth is also here. Can I take this time and give it to you, Ms. Ruth, and really just give us just a brief background of who you are and take us on the journey of economic recovery. Thank you so much, Ma.
Thank you very much. I am Ruth Bengu. I'm the founder and the executive director of the Institute for Cooperatives and Community Economic Development. I've been asked to speak on the economic recovery and reconstruction. I chose to add transformation, mainly because the problems that exist in the economy of uneven levels of development existed even before the pandemic. So if we are then taking a holistic approach, we would then consider transformation, reconstruction, and recovery to build a mixed economic system. I'm saying that because I'm also standing in for the DSG of the African National Congress, which has got policies related to economic transformation. I want to take us back to the resolution that was taken by the African National Congress in the consultative conference that was held in 1969 in Morogoro, where the ANC resolved that when it assumes power, it will transform the economy into a mixed economic system, which would be driven by 3 pillars. The first pillar being the state-owned enterprises, meaning that over and above the existing, the enterprises that existed at that time, when the ANC assumes power, it would then establish other state-owned enterprises, such as a government-owned minerals company, a government-owned pharmaceutical company. We can name a number of them. The second pillar is private-owned enterprises, which were existing and which are actually expanding as we speak. And then the third pillar is a pillar that did not exist. It's a community-owned enterprises or workers-owned enterprises. And the ANC took that resolution because the economy in South Africa was actually dominated by the private sector. Hence, even in the National Development Plan that we have today, there are 3 challenges that are identified in there. It's a high level of unemployment, it's high level of poverty, and then what is called inequality. In the language of development, we call that uneven levels of development, which means that in South Africa, we have 2 societies. We have a developed society that can participate in the economy as owners of the means of production. And then we have a society that is on the welfare side of the state, of the economy, which is underdeveloped. It's a society that consumes goods and services and then provides labor to those who own the economy. So in essence, we have two systems in our country. We have a welfare system for the poor who are sustained by government through social grants and free services. And then we have, on the other hand, a development system that absorbs, that is occupied by those who are actively involved in the economy, whether they are from the previously advantaged or previously disadvantaged. So in developing then the cooperative-based community economic development is a model that it took me 10 years to develop. I started in 2006, and then in 2016, we registered what is called the Institute for Cooperatives and Community Economic Development, which then implements the cooperative-based community economic development model. What the model seeks to achieve and do is to train and facilitate the establishment of cooperatives, viable cooperatives, and then position them as catalysts for building sustainable communities. In terms of the infrastructure, we are looking at a situation where we would align the training of cooperatives and development of cooperatives to service delivery challenges of municipalities where there are potholes. There is a challenge of rigged electricity, too many people on the indigent register of the municipalities. We see that intervention is an intervention that would facilitate. Firstly, we align the establishment of cooperatives by people who are either surviving on social grants or surviving through the public employment programs of government, where they would earn about 800 rands a month. You then align those to facilitate a situation where underdeveloped communities can also participate in providing services for themselves and then working with government. The second area that we are looking at is an area which relates to the built environment, where we train and facilitate the establishment of housing cooperatives, which are owned by people who are getting the subsidy from government. In doing so, we then bring the 4 pillars that make cooperatives sustain and become viable. The first pillar is knowledge, which is provided through the Institute. The second pillar is finance, which would then build the cooperative banks. The third pillar is industry, where the materials that are actually used in the built environment would be produced by the beneficiaries. And then the fourth pillar is the retail, where you would then set up a marketplace or a consumer place where this exchange could then take place, with the money that comes into that community leaves the community. Even the 350 rands that government is giving to poor people in this country because of the pandemic, that money doesn't remain in those communities. If there are 1,000 people who are receiving 300 rands, let's say there are 1 million people who are receiving 350 rands per month. That is 3.5 billion per month. And if you multiply that by 10 or 12, it's money that is big enough to establish in each district very viable enterprises that are owned by the very same people that government is looking after through the 350 rands. So at the center of what we are doing and what we are advocating for is the shift by government from a consumptive budget to a productive budget to enable people who are seen as underdeveloped, the inequality that we talk about, where there are haves and have-nots, to then use that budget to actually facilitate their active participation in the economy as owners of the means of production. So in a nutshell, that is what we are advocating for, and that is what I am pushing for. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you so much, Mama Wifi. And I think that was such an important presentation, and you touched on so many things that I feel as people here in this session really want to tackle, and we thank you so much for that presentation. Without wasting more time, because we know that we are, time is not on our side. I'll also just reiterate that when you see my face on the screen, just know that you have a minute left just to wrap up. So our next speaker that is going to join us and really just touch on something that's very important is Ms. Tasneem Motara, the MEC of Infrastructure Development. Ms. Tasneem, your face.
I am, yes.
Oh, thank you so much. I think for us, it's really just important to understand what the interventions of governments are within the economic recovery. Maybe just touch on that for us and just bring it closer as to what can we do. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I know that you've got a fully packed lineup. And in the shorter space of time, we've got to be able just to present as much information as possible. So I'm going to really try my best to do that. I don't have a presentation. Let me just say good morning to everybody, the leadership of SAWIC and BE, and thank you for the opportunity to participate in a very, very important conversation that we should be having just about the participation of women as well as youth in particular in the construction and built environment. I think so I'm just going to say all protocol observed and just thanks for giving me the opportunity. But without really repeating a lot of what has been said, I think we do understand the role and the responsibility that the built environment and construction in particular play in the revitalization of the economy. And, you know, history is also littered with examples of those. So, for instance, after the Second World War, the American economy was rebuilt just on public spend and the spend of the public purse in public infrastructure and a comprehensive rollout of that. And that's just one example, but there are many where government then put finances and funding into the built environment space and just roll out infrastructure, and it's able to create jobs, it's able to create jobs in the economy, whether direct or indirect, and throughout a complete value chain. So for us, I think we also follow that premise to say that, and we identify the fact that definitely the construction and built environment is a catalyst for economic spin-offs, as well as just to be able to revitalize the economy. But I think there are many aspects that go into that, and it's some of the things that we've got to be able to get right. Part of it is that that we should crowd spread. The rand value that you would achieve over a longer period of time is not the same that you would achieve when you crowd in funding. So that speaks to the district development model that I'm not sure how many of us are familiar with it, but it's just to be able to pull all projects that are being planned by different either spheres of government, whether it's local, provincial, national, or even SOEs, and pull them into a specific area and what we call a district as for this instance, as opposed to doing a street here, a road somewhere else, a water project somewhere further away. And being able then to see the spin-offs of that spending. Importantly, I think there are three key aspects that have been identified in terms of opportunities, three core areas of opportunities in the built environment and construction space within the department specifically, but I think in government spending. So the first is the construction itself. And of course, here we rely on our partners such as SAWIC and BE, but also other partners, for instance, such as CIDB, to be able to regulate, to be able to also offer training, business development skills and expertise to the construction and those who are in the construction space. So there are direct opportunities for construction, and in the government space, you're talking about whether it's the local, provincial, or national departments. You're speaking for all grades, whether it's 1 right up to grade 9. And there are a lot of opportunities. And I know one of the speakers earlier spoke about just the regulatory framework. I think it's important that we understand that many sectors, majority of the sectors, business sectors in South Africa, are highly regulated and for good cause. And for us to be able to adequately participate, we've got to understand the regulations, we've got to adhere to the norms and standards, we've also got to keep up to date with whatever changes are being made in the industry. So just being able to participate as a construction company, contractor, directly and indirectly. And when I say directly, it's bidding directly with government departments. Indirectly is through subcontracting. The second is the professional space. So the professional space would be, and it continues to grow. It continues to grow in terms of just identifying new disciplines, new areas of competence that must be identified individually in the built environment space. And the professionals here, I'm speaking about engineers, civil, mechanical, electrical engineers. We even have fire engineering now, and then your quantity surveying, architecture, and even within architecture, you have other disciplines within it, project management as a discipline on its own. And again, it's a regulated environment. It has got professional norms and standards. And I urge everybody, those who have really gotten into the space as in the academic sense of it, understand what the needs of both the private and the public sector are when it comes to your profession, and stick to the norms and standards, the requirement, the ethics, the code of conduct, the principles, etc., of professionals in the built environment space, because we rely on those professionals to be able to do the work that we do as government. And more, yes, while we do employ a lot of professionals, but as we know, local authorities also want an external independent professional for various disciplines to be able to accept. And then the third aspect is the aspect of manufacturing and the supply of material. And here it's about, everything that goes into the construction. So it can be as small as nails and as big as huge plants for hire. And young people and women have not really explored. the manufacturing of goods and supplies that go into construction, and just the ability to be able to supply the industry. And there's a huge value chain that is really untapped. And with the advent of COVID, I think the opportunities have risen a lot more. We have realized that we can't rely on the import material as much as we could. And it has opened up the economy for opportunities to be able to manufacture those. So at a high level, those are the three key areas that I think there are huge opportunities for. Some need you to be professionally qualified, so it needs a degree. Others need business acumen and training, as well as mentoring, which is readily available and And as government, I think if we can get those three aspects right and ready, we will be able to also just expand our space. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tasneem, for that detailed presentation. And I think most of our attendees took notes, they wrote down, and most definitely the recording will be shared so that everyone can just go through this recording and really take points on what is it that they want to continue with and achieve. Just to continue on this trajectory, we want to welcome Ms. Mahlatsi Molokome. She is the lead infrastructure financing, investment and infrastructure in the Office of the President. And I think you're going to touch on something that all of us here are very interested on, which is finance. And I think for women, youth, and people with disability, it's one of the struggles that we have. How do we get finance, and how do we access it, you know? So I think you're gonna touch on that and just let us know how do we then match the two within the economic recovery. Ms. Mahlatsi, please just take over. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the introduction. I'm really excited to be on this particular platform. Generally, I'm invited to more of the investment hub conferences and the like, so a different audience for me today. And so hopefully I'm also able to facilitate my messaging quite clearly. So I actually did prepare one slide just so that at least as I'm speaking to it, there is some kind of visual referencing for you. So I'm just going to share my screen quickly, and I'm just going to talk to the elements that I just really want to cover from an investments perspective. So let's start with gross fixed capital formation. So if we consider that, in essence, you know, the estimates of gross fixed capital formation are grouped into various asset classes, which are used to classify how government revenue expenditure is kind of grouped or compartmentalized, as well as assets and liabilities, of which, when we consider gross fixed capital formation, buildings and constructions works are of most importance from an infrastructure perspective. So if we consider the gross fixed capital formation as a percentage of GDP, so we're looking at the relationship there. If we look at over the year 2020, it was approximately estimated at about 16% of GDP. Now, if we consider the National Development Plan target, which is currently sitting at 30%, what we would have achieved over 2020 is significantly below that. And even before the COVID-19 pandemic, it was sitting at around 18%. So regardless of the impact of that pandemic, we are still sitting significantly below 30%. Now, what the NDP has tried to do is acknowledge the link between investment in infrastructure development and the buoyancy of the construction sector and its employment creation capacity. So if you look at the far right of the screen I've projected, we're seeing the impact of the contraction in GDP, as well as the construction industry and the employment impact there. So now here, or at least this now set the platform and the need to crowd in private sector investment to participate alongside the government in terms of the investment in infrastructure, projects and development, and towards reaching that 30% target that we're seeing on the far left of the screen. So one of the key objectives for the office that I'm currently serving my time in, which is the Investment and Infrastructure Office, also known as Infrastructure South Africa, is to facilitate an enabling environment for the participation of private sector investors in infrastructure investment. So from that particular perspective, what I've seen is the ripple effect of incentivization in seeking impact from the projects that you invest in. So as an example, investors have requirements for the money that they disperse to meet environmental, governance, and social objectives. This is also known as ESG investors or impact investors. And we have seen a subsequent appetite for investors seeking to invest in renewable energy, a lot coming from foreign direct investors, as well as domestic resource mobilization. It has had that impact. So in a similar way, we want to, kind of bring in, perhaps when we're assessing projects that are preferred for investment, to have a greater emphasis on the participation of women, youth, and persons who are differently able. So if we consider, for example, projects that are well-designed, appropriately located, and that are also affordable just in nature, that infrastructure is actually quite a powerful tool in the pursuit of gender equality and also to the greater extent, inclusive economic growth. So we need to create an environment that is strategic and intentional, that would allow us, when I say us, I say women and the youth, as well as those who are differently able, to take up space in this particular environment. With this objective in mind, as an example of what we've done in our office is that we've recruited a graduate that has a master's in gender studies, and we're looking at strategically and intentionally, adopting and creating frameworks in the context of infrastructure delivery and the value chain and the value chains that have, that downstream and ripple, the benefit that they derive from infrastructure development, to incorporate those elements of, inclusivity in their impact assessment, and in terms of just, the metrics and indicators that we're using to identify projects that are preferred to invest in, where key features there is the participation of women, the youth, and those who are differently able. So I won't take up more time in that particular regard, so that in case we have some time for additional conversation, but in essence, that was the key theme I wanted to drive from an investment perspective, and it's a matter of incentivizing the right outputs from infrastructure delivery.
Thank you so much, Mahlet. And I think that was just straight to the point. And truly, we will come back if we do have time for a Q&A, just to delve deeper into the economic recovery and also just the investment that you spoke so much. And I think we were able to just grasp just a few. I'm just listening and I'm like, okay, investors, ESG. And I'm like, can she take it a bit slow, because I want to grab everything. But I think we will have time, hopefully, just to come back for this conversation, just for you to elaborate on the investment plans that you've spoken about. So just to continue this conversation, we have in our midst also Ms. Kekeletso Ramtsilo. She is a young person who's also just in the manufacturing space. And Kekeletso, I want you to take us through your journey and also just elaborate on being a young person in manufacturing. How did you get into that, and the opportunities that are there, but also the products that you are selling?
Hi, everyone. I hope I'm visible.
Yes, you are.
I would like to say thank you so much for this opportunity, and greetings to all and all protocols observed. With respect to time, I'm going to sum up my introduction. So I'm from a manufacturing company, women-owned and women-led. We are in the manufacturing and eco-friendly space. I'm a proud innovator of a plastic eco-friendly brick. Yes, plastic. We recycle all types of plastic, even your non-recyclable plastic. So those are that are considered no value. We are able to recycle them and make a brick that is strong, durable, and fire retardant. We have tapped into a stringent market, mainly male dominated. On top of that, the pandemic. Hence why platforms like these are greatly appreciated by us. Manufacturing is vital in the recovery of the economy. And I mean, that's why I'm part of this amazing journey. And just to give a personal background, I have a background in civil engineering, and I am in business and partnership with my sister. We are the co-founders of this innovative company called Ramzila Manufacturing. We are based in Gauteng, and we are breaking boundaries. And it's no surprise amongst many other things that took a huge knock during these trying times, but there are lessons we need to take, and that is for us to start locally manufacturing and supporting locally made products and or services. We have a responsibility to create, and also the responsibility to also make sure that the money circulates within the country. If we learn to source things from the country and start sourcing, I mean, South Africa has a lot of materials like your gold minerals, and your magnesium and chrome, just to name a few. And if we can learn the ability of not always importing the raw minerals, but processing them and also creating value in them and higher value in selling the materials. I think I come in a space where I'm gonna help you see that with opportunities like this and what the other speakers have laid down for us, and the opportunities that they've laid down for us, is the economy is still in our hands, and the economy is still 100% our responsibility. And we, especially as the youth and the women, need to take a stand in recovering this, so we ensure that the economy is recoverable, but mainly sustainable. I'll give an example in the construction industry. We need to learn to expand our horizons when it comes to the construction industry. I think many of us are taught that construction is mainly building a building. We forget that there's other trades like building materials, designing, and many other trades that we can tap into in the same field. And this, ladies and gentlemen, will teach us that there is enough cake for everyone, but not one flavor. Little education is given to a Black person about the green economy. I mean, even the term green economy is new to us. Many of us have been part of the green economy without knowing them. And the dangerous about that is we are taken advantage of by the bigger people with ample knowledge. The green technology is critical in the infrastructure development. This is evident in the government's commitment to using alternative building technology and green building. There's so many projects that are out there. There's so many projects that are both innovative, women-led, and also amazing and new and recyclable. With recycling, I think it's important to also remember that when you recycle a product, like for us, plastic, we make sure that the plastic does not end up in landfills and rivers after we've processed this. This ensures that we keep the green circular economy sustainable. Women need to be, I think personally, women need to be reminded of their power, strength, brilliant minds and bodies we have. We have such rare skills, and I would like to see more women taking leadership roles and creating more. We need women manufacturers, especially in the fields that are still considered male dominant. Too many women do good in isolation because we are faced with so many challenges that partnerships and growing more women networks is an exercise and a half. There are a number, although low, of women manufacturers out there, but in isolation. If we can circulate opportunities amongst us, so we find access easy and we're also more visible. We need women to mentor more. I think this is an opportunity that many of us don't realize how impactful it is. Women, and especially the youth, need to be taught to think and dream big. That innovation doesn't have color, gender, or role. A simple change of conversation can do a lot to a mindset. One needs to equip themselves to seek opportunities. Our growth is dependent on the ability of manufacturers creating opportunities, like the true intention and reflection of the woman of 1956. Economic recovery is everyone's responsibility. Although there's many red tapes, with platforms like these, we are able to learn and relay our challenges to the right target audience. And this helps us to relay our challenges to the right ears and opportunity. I thank you so much for this opportunity. And I think we'd all benefit more if we open this platform for discussion and to learning more about each and everyone's traits.
Thank you so much, Kekeleso, for that presentation. And I think maybe my question to you would be, what were the barriers to entry for you as a young person, especially in this industry? What did you find that was difficult, and how did you maneuver for you guys to get to where you are, the level at which you are? And also the process it took for you guys to get approved by SABS. Just take us through that journey, because I think most of us here who want to get into the manufacturing space would really like to take some notes and understand the procedures as well.
Thank you so much for the questions. I would like to firstly start off with saying, yes, there are a lot of challenges, and I'm going to name a few, but it's not impossible. And we need to also make manufacturing a common thing, so that challenges like the ones I'm going to relay are actually things that we solve easy. There are many challenges as I have faced as a woman, especially a youth. I think for one, what has helped me is most of the time just thinking of myself as a human being and not my gender. This has helped me to not take things so personally, especially sometimes when you go into a meeting and people are assuming that you're not the owner, and people will tell you to your face that we would like to take this conversation forward with the owner of the company. And I mean, such things make me more tenacious and strong. Such challenges make me also have given me the ability to know the ins and outs of my product. I cannot stress that enough. I think more than anything, whether you are male or female, young or old, if you don't know the ins and outs of your product or service, it's going to be a challenge. Because with innovation like ours, we brought plastic bricks that are made out of part plastic. So obviously there was a lot of raised eyebrows, and through our knowledge, we were able to know not only how to make the bricks, but also how to run a sustainable company. We have had to do things like your feasibility test, your market research, where you're literally standing in a corner and asking people if this is a product they'll like to know more of, a product that they'll like to use, and a product that they will receive in the market before you even start with the prototyping stages. And I think that's the vital, important steps that mentorship can be able to teach each and every individual. And as much as this is a great opportunity, there's lessons to learn before, during, and after. I mean, opportunities like this also teach me, with what everybody has said and the impact that everybody has had on me personally is a great benefit, because I've had the opportunities of working with the likes of DBSA. I've had the opportunities of working with the likes of SEDA, and personally with opportunities from personal clients like Abu Mamkile. And those are things that without these platforms, without these opportunities, we cannot tap into as easily. There's a lot of red tapes that I've mentioned, and I mean, the certification process, that's a challenge and a half, but with a lot of protection, a lot of knowing your product, and a lot of knowing also the industry norms helped us to be able to face these challenges. As we went to SABS, we went to Agreement SA, and we went to learn what needs to be done and what we should be doing. Yes, it wasn't easy, and yes, we've learned so much on the road, and we still are learning so much on the road, but it is great confidence to know that once I've went through this journey, my product is SABS approved. My product is not only strong, durable, and fire retardant, but can withstand other atmospheres and other pressures and other things that I myself as an individual cannot foresee in the future. And so I please embrace and just want to even though I have a lot of aches and pains, just also to learn and teach women that innovate, manufacture, stop being scared, and face it. And this is how we're going to have a sustainable green economy, if we innovate, and use and exploit such opportunities and such great mbokotos that we have on platforms like these.
Thank you so much, Kekeleto. And I think we took much information from that. And those are growing pains, obviously, for an entrepreneur. So I say, Mbokodo to you. And I think just to bring back Umam Ruth, I think she touched on a productive budget. And I think we want to hear more about that, Mama Ruth Uwoti. What is the plan and how are we planning to implement and the rollout of a productive budget?
Thank you very much. Currently, the Institute for Cooperatives and Community Economic Development has a signed MOU with the Department of Cooperative Governance to align the cooperatives-based community economic development model to the district development model. And the reason for that is to look at the people that are in the public employment programs who are earning 800 rands and working for 8 days, to say how can we develop them over a period of 36 months, give them the business management skills, give them the technical skills that are related to service delivery challenges. The first pilot that we are doing is in KZN, where we are looking at training 2,000 people who are in the public employment program, who are working for a few days in a month and then earning a stipend, to then say, in a period of 36 months, you can then develop these people, form them into cooperatives, and ensure that they gain all the skills and they've got all the equipment that is required for them to then qualify for the 30% procurement policy that exists, which means that if a big company has got a contract, that big company has to then subcontract to an emerging company. But for a very long time, we haven't seen cooperatives benefiting from the 30% development related market share. In doing that, then we are saying, when you talk about the economy, infrastructure is central to development of the economy. So you then need to align the training to the service delivery challenges that relate to the collapse or development of the economy. And in this case, it's routine road maintenance, it's potholes repairs, it's water loss management, it's waste management to ensure that the products that are seen as a waste are actually seen as wealth if they are then recycled and processed into byproducts. So in a nutshell, we are saying that we now have the district development model. You put that at the center, you then facilitate, you link the development of cooperatives to the district development model to ensure that those cooperatives, those people that are trained are formed into cooperatives. And when they exit the training program, they are ready to tender on their own, or they are ready to be subcontracted by bigger companies and have the 30% share of the economy. We think that also would reduce the conflict that exists where forums, community forums would go and demand a 30% share having not done the work. And on the other hand, the companies that have got a tender are not able to take those people because they don't have the necessary skills that are required, and also the material that the equipment that is required to undertake the 30% subcontraction work. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mama Ruth. And I think that was really just straight to the point. Also, just to bring in Tasmin, we have questions on the Q&A. They keep coming. So I just want to go through the questions and maybe we can answer those. The first question is from, I hope I'm reading this right, Jamfaj, Civil Engineers. It says, is the process towards funding or partnership with private or public organizations smooth? How challenging is it to approach those organizations? He didn't specify who the question is for, but I think most of our people within the investment and funding space will respond to that. And then the second question is from Tsibo. He says, are social grants sustainable? And for how many more generations further will we be able to sustain social grants? And I also just want to add 2 more questions. Those ones are for Tasneem. How will the infrastructure investment plan as part of the economic reconstruction and recovery plan be rolled out to communities, and how can SMMEs participate in these opportunities? And then the second one would be, Minister De Lille announced that her 100 billion infrastructure fund is to be established and operationalized by 2024. How much of that will be set aside for both women, youth, and people with disabilities? Can we tackle that? And then we'll come back to the second round of questions. Were you able to note this, Tasneem? Tasneem? I'm not sure if she's still here. Okay. Maybe Ms. Molokome can also just come in and answer some of the questions that were posed here with regards to funding.
Yes, I can assist there. So I think the second question is more relevant for myself
Yes.
around the infrastructure fund and the 100 billion committed by the government to facilitate that particular funding. So I think just a point of clarity, and I think this is where perhaps we might have, just in terms of communicating appropriately around what the infrastructure fund is and the objectives for the infrastructure fund. So the infrastructure fund is a vehicle, so it's a vehicle that's meant to facilitate blended finance. So blended finance seeks to look at how we can use concessional finance, so finance that doesn't require commercial returns and the like, and the people that, or the best placed stakeholder to play a role there is government, and hence the government contribution, and using that to catalyze additional financing or crowding in from the private sector that generally would be risk averse and don't necessarily want to participate in the infrastructure investment space, especially for public infrastructure where there might be challenges there. And in addition, just to make sure that you are able to de-risk projects for their participation. So we would want to crowd in, for example, your multilateral development banks, commercial banks, institutional investors such as pension funds, insurers that are sitting on pools of capital that can be dispersed and used for the benefit of, economic development through infrastructure development as a mechanism. So I think that's just the clarification. So it's not a fund of money that's looking to disperse financing to entities or the like. It's looking to facilitate almost like conjoined collaborated financing for infrastructure. And so that it's actually up and running. The executive was appointed in December 2020. The team has been capacitated with about 17 investment and structuring professionals thus far. And about 6 projects are currently sitting in that pipeline for approval. And again, I just want to emphasize the fact that we're using government contribution and commitment as a mechanism to additionally attract additional financing there. So in terms of what that means for women, youth, and people who are differently abled, So as I was indicating in terms of impact, so in terms of the project that we select to invest in, we're looking for projects that are catalytic and have impact elements, just in terms of spatial reconfiguration, inclusivity. And one of those impact elements that we're going to look at is, for example, in the process of rolling out that particular infrastructure, to what extent would it reach entrepreneurs that have, to what extent does it involve the youth? So that's what I was indicating when I was saying, when we're considering projects and the impact that they have, we must also ensure that we are facilitating a greater discussion around the participation of our interested parties, which is women, the youth, and those who are differently abled. And even just, for example, the projects and how they are designed and what they were looking to address. So if you're looking at the design of infrastructure, to some extent, it must be deliberate in catering for those who are differently abled. So those are the mechanisms that we're looking at. Recently, we did a site visit for a human settlements social infrastructure type facility, which was looking at social housing. And there were specific blocks that were specifically designed and created for those who are differently abled, just to ensure that within the social housing prospects, you're not only looking at the social part, but you're also looking at to what extent is it accessible for people of different walks of life and with all types of abilities, just in terms of being mobile and etc. So yeah, so I think we're working a lot in that regard and just filling in that particular space and in that gap. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mahlatsi. And I think that detailed explanation, I think now we are more aware of what it is and what it is not. I'm not sure if the Honorable MEC is still here, just to answer her questions.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm looking for the questions. Are they in the chat?
Okay, let me just read them again for you. Okay, we have this one. It says, what it will take for us to ensure that infrastructure development is all inclusive per person with people with disabilities as well.
Okay, let me answer that one first. Okay. So I think importantly is the fact that you start with regulation. So everything that we build, like I said earlier on, the built environment is a sector that is highly regulated. So there are building standards and building regulations, just in terms of occupation, just in terms of being able to access, etc., etc. I think we have gone a long way in terms of just addressing issues of access for people with disability. So for instance, all our social infrastructure must, it's a prerequisite that in the design elements, they are made friendly for those who are differently abled. We also tend to those when we are doing major refurbishment and major renovations. We ensure that accessibility and usability is a very, very key component. So whether we're building primary school, and just renovating, we make sure that as we renovate, we also update them to the current building standards and requirements.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Honorable MEC. We are running out of time. I wish we had enough time so that you can answer all these questions. But all the questions are noted in our chat box and also in our Q&A session. We will share these questions so that all the panelists are able to answer them and give us feedback, and then we'll share them accordingly. Without wasting time, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of our panelists for sharing their information, for being open enough to give us feedback, and also just tell us what is it that we need to look forward to within the economic recovery. And I think this webinar really has opened up our eyes, and we are keen and we are willing and saying, Bogoto, we are here, we are working.